Well, good morning. How are you guys doing? Doing good. All right, it's good to see you. Hey, my name is Sean Wood. If we've never met before, I'm the lead pastor here at Freedom Church, and it is great to see you this weekend. I hope you're having a good weekend. Hey, in fact, why don't we just start this weekend off great? Why don't you just turn to the person next to you and tell them, hey, you look like you've been losing some weight. That's what it looks. You look really good today. And, even if it's not true, it just feels good, doesn't it, to have somebody tell you that? And Thanksgiving's coming up, so you need to hear that. Here's what I also figured out. If you will lose a half a pound a day between now and Thanksgiving, you can eat 12 pounds worth of food on Thanksgiving or something like that. So you just go ahead and do that, and that'll hook you up. Or a pound a day, something like that. I don't know what it is. But anyway, hey, speaking of food, have you ever had this happen to you? You buy a box of cereal. Now, on Team Wood, we like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Can I get an amen in the house for some Cinnamon Toast Crunch? It's the good stuff, best stuff in the world, in my opinion. And but you buy this cereal, and you look in the box, and you would think that you have a hearty amount of cereal, since it costs $19 a box for cereal nowadays. And you think, man, this thing is a big old box of cereal. I've got a nice amount of cereal. But you get home, you open it up, you kind of open the seal, and you figure out that they have filled this thing up with a lot of air and then a lot of cereal, right? I mean, there's just a lot of air. Who knew that cereal needs air to kind of breathe a little bit while it's in the box? And you're kind of disappointed as you open it up that it is just sort of full. Have you guys ever experienced that before at all? That you thought you had a full box? It's not full at all. And so my question this weekend, as we kind of start this series, is individually, so for you as an individual, but also for us as a church, how full do we want God to fill up our lives with joy, with peace, with grace, with blessings that He gives us? How full do we want it to be? And do we want to really experience a kind of a letdown moment where we realize we didn't get all we could from God and all that He had to offer? Or do we want to have an experience where He fills it all the way up to the very top? And the reason I'm asking this question is because the theme of our coming year of 2015 is going to be set during this series. In fact, over the next 3 weekends, we're going to just be setting this kind of the stage for what I really believe God wants to do in the life of our church in 2015. And that word is overflow. Overflow. I think that God, we are poised as a church, and you are poised as an individual with what we've been looking at all of 2014, with what He's done in our church, among us, through us, working on us, but also working in us over the last 3 years, is that we are poised to overflow in the next year. In fact, what I believe is that we're going to overflow, literally a new building that's going to be full of people on mission. Not just full of people who are doing church, but people who are being the church, like 170 plus of you were yesterday when you were just serving. And that's the other thing, is not only are we going to have a building overflowing with people on mission, we're going to have a people and a vibrant oikos community, like we talked about last weekend, who are serving the least of these. That we're kind of just letting what God has done in us overflow out of our lives, and that we are able to give that to the people around us and overflow. That we're going to have full hearts from the relationships that are being built in this church. The oikos friendships, these friendships that you can share life together. That we're going to have just an overflow of joy and peace. And do you know that you can give joy away? That you can walk through a room, and because of the overflow of joy that you have, that you're able to give that joy away. Because of the overflow of peace that you have, you can give that peace away. In fact, the Bible tells us that you can borrow faith from someone else. So there may be someone who's praying on your behalf, who's believing on your behalf, and they have an overflow of faith on behalf for you, and that you can borrow their faith from them. And so we're saying we're going to overflow in these relationships that we build. And if you're left out of these opportunities to serve, and if you're left out of the relationships that are being built in our small groups as we build community, then you're missing out on the overflow that God has for you. But I believe He's got something for you for 2015. I believe that we're going to have full souls. Not just our physical bodies having an overflow, and not just our spirits being overflow with our connection to God, but our souls being full so that we can overflow into other people's lives. I saw this in practice yesterday as we were serving, which is what the church is called to do, to be the church. We were going around from kind of place to place and just peeking in on you guys that were doing all kind of projects, but we decided to land with our family for just a little while at the nursing home here in Moncks Corner. And so we were there, and we were in, and we met this woman who she was a little bit young to be in a long-term facility. You could just kind of tell by looking at her that life had not treated her well, that her body was failing, that she didn't have anybody to take care of her because of that, and now she was very too early in a long-term facility. And as we looked at her, you could just see that she was sad. Just really sad. And I tell you, there's nothing, though, that will make you go from sadness to joy like three adorable little children, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, to come up and just spend time with you. And so they were over there just smiling at her. And my wife, who's just really good, Connie is, that just leaned down, looking people in the eyes and talking to them. They were talking to them. And you just saw her countenance pick up. You saw her eyes kind of brighten up. And you saw a smile come on her face as there was an overflow. As we were going through the obedience of serving, God chose to take something that was in us, overflow it out of my kids, and it was left there for her. And she was better because of that. And I believe that God's going to do that in a lot of our lives. I also believe that God is going to give us an overflow of opportunity to be able to be generous this year. And in order to do that, I believe that some of you have business ideas that you've been mulling around, and you're going to launch that business. Some of you have been for a long time thinking that it's time for you to go to the boss and say, hey, you know what? It's time for me to get a raise because I want to be a more generous person. Some of you have businesses, and I've been praying that God would bless those businesses, that you would see an overflow, not so that it can just stay right there in your house and in your family, but so that it can be extended through generosity, not as a reservoir, but as a river of generosity flowing out to our community as we serve them. And so I'm praying that God would bless you. The Bible says that all good things come from God. And so I'm praying for good things for you because I want things of God for you. I want you to be blessed. I want you to be able to say, can you believe how God has blessed me because of the overflow that I have? And because He's blessed me now, I can be a blessing to others, giving away joy, giving away faith, giving away peace, giving away my time, giving away my talent that He has given me, and then giving away of my treasure that God's going to give us a chance to do that. And so it's the prayer of your elders and your leaders as we kind of set the table now. In the time of November, it's just a time to say, let's get ready for 2015. Let's get ready for the new year. And so we're praying that God would extend His blessings to our church, that He would give us even more favor, as He already has given us incredible favor over the last 3 years, but that we're asking for more. We're asking for more blessings. We're asking for more favor because God promises that He will give us more when we ask and if we use it for His glory. So we want an overflow, an overflow. And as we've been preparing this series for the last few months now, I've been stuck on this passage of Scripture that speaks to overflow. In fact, this word overflow and this idea of overflow doesn't come from us. It comes from the Bible. It comes specifically from Jesus. It's found in Luke chapter 6, verse 37 and 38. There's a story there that Jesus tells. I'm going to read that together to be on the side screens if you don't have it. And then we're going to talk about what this picture that the Bible paints for us, what the picture looks like for us as we are being the church. Luke chapter 6, verse 37 and 38. It says, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." Here's a picture that's being painted. I want you to imagine it's talking about grain in this instance, that you go to the merchant to buy grain, and in this day and time they would go with their sack to get new grain, but you just imagine that it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, okay? And you're going to get your Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you pull it off the shelf, you have your box there, and you look inside of it, and you see that it's not full up. But as you're walking to buy it, the merchant stops you, and he says, wait a minute, you don't have enough in there. Like, so he shakes it up a little bit. He says, let's shake it a little bit. Let's press it down. And you're like, watch out, bro. Don't push it up, because then I like it to be full when I eat it. It gets dusty when you crunch it up. And so, but he pushes it down. He shakes it a little bit, and then he pours some more in there. He shakes it a little bit more, and it's full to the top. And you're like, man, I'm finally getting my $19 worth. This is incredible. And he's like, wait a minute. It's not full enough yet. He shakes it some more. And can I stop there for just a minute? Sometimes God has to shake up your life in order to make more room for his presence in your life. And some of you need to hear that. Like you need more of God's Spirit in your life. You need more of his power. You need more of his presence. You need more of his peace. You need more of his grace in your life. But you feel like everything's full. You're kind of anxious. You're kind of stressed. And something's shaking your life up right now. Something's been shaking you up. And it's to make room in your life so that there's room for the presence of God. So he shakes it. He goes, wait a minute, that's not full enough. He says, hold your shirt out. It's describing here, the language here is like, literally in the lap, you hold your shirt out. He starts to pour more Cinnamon Toast Crunch into your lap, and you are walking out of the store with a full box, with a lap full, a shirt full, and you go and you just dump it at your house, and you've got more than us, an overflow. You're inviting the neighbors over. Come on, have some Cinnamon Toast Crunch with us. We're going to have a Cinnamon Toast Crunch party. Somebody turn to your neighbor right now and tell him, I need some milk. That's what I need, because he's talking about Cinnamon Toast Crunch way too much. How do you like that image? It's an overflow. It's more than you can take. Jesus says this guy goes to the merchant, and this is what God is like. He gives us more. He shakes us a little bit to make room. He presses us a little bit to make room because he wants to give us more. He wants to overflow our lives with blessings. He wants to overflow our lives with joy. He wants to overflow our lives with a peace that passes all understanding. He says, I want to give you all good things. And those who love me, man, I want to give you I want to press it down even more, because he's a good dad and a good father who wants to take care of his people. And today I want to ask, what will it take for Freedom Church to experience this kind of blessing? What will it take for the people that make up Freedom Church individually to experience this kind of blessing? Well, it tells us here in this verse. This passage gives us 3 characteristics of people that God blesses extravagantly. And don't ever be fooled as you read Scripture. There is this principle called favor. In fact, we're going to talk about it in 3 or 4 weeks in our Christmas series. There's this principle called favor that comes from God. And it is his extravagant blessings. Never feel guilty when the ball bounces right for you and you're able to score the touchdown to beat the Florida Gators, and you block a field goal and you block a punt all in the same game. Can I get a Gamecock that says, I have finally seen God move in one of our games? Finally. It hasn't been a lot, but it's just a little bit. We'll just take a little bit. But don't feel guilty when the ball bounces the right way. Don't feel guilty when your business is blessed. Don't feel guilty when God gives you an amazing, amazing life, because he wants to shower you with blessings. Know that it's from him when you use it correctly. When you use it to be something to bless others. When you give away your joy, don't keep it all to yourself. When you give away your peace, don't keep it all to yourself. And so he says, you want to be blessed extravagantly by God. Let me ask you this question. Do you want to be blessed extravagantly by God? It's not a trick question. Only 8 of you said yes. We'll take all of your blessings if you don't want it. Do you want to be blessed extravagantly by God? The God who can bless you. Now, so how can we overflow with God's blessings? 3 ways. Now, these ways aren't the ways that you think they are. And when you read them, you're going to go, wait a minute, I thought I was getting, and it seems like I'm giving a whole lot in this. Isn't God unique in the way that he blesses us? Because we get our greatest blessing when we're able to give something away. Look at the first thing. The forgiven should be forgivers. 3 characteristics of those who are blessed extravagantly by God in Scriptures. We see they are both forgiven, but they are forgivers. And forgiven should be forgivers. Look at verses 27 and 28. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody here have enemies? Don't point. Somebody's face just entered into your mind, didn't it? I mean, you just thought about somebody. Can you think of, let me ask you, let me break it down a little bit. Who is that person who when you go to Walmart, you're like, oh man, I hope they're not in there. You know they'll be in there today. I'm going to go into Walmart. And then you're like walking the aisle and you see them and you're like, whoa, goodness gracious. There they are. You hide right behind the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, just hoping that they don't see you. And you're like, I don't want to run into them. Why? Because they hurt me. Man, they did something one time, and it just really was hurtful. They still are doing something. I mean, I haven't forgiven them. They are my enemy, you would say. Is there anyone, that face that jumped into your mind maybe even, who's hurt you so badly that honestly, you think about it almost every day? They kind of live rent-free in your mind. And you allow them to just kind of control your thoughts, control your mood, control your emotions, because they just pop up every now and then. Even though they hurt you a long time ago, they just continue to pop up. What do we do when someone hurts us? What do we do when someone says things about us that we can't reconcile? Jesus says here, he says, love your enemies. Love them. Later on in verse 37, he says, forgive, and you will be forgiven. I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow. N.T. Wright put it this way as a pastor. He said, think of the best thing you can do for the worst person, and then go ahead and do it. It says, think of the people to whom you are tempted to be nasty to, and lavish generosity on them instead. Do you want an overflow of God's blessing in your life? Then you forgive extravagantly. It'll change your life. There are some of you who your attitude is affected by someone who doesn't think of you ever, but you think of them often. There's someone that you haven't forgiven. They don't even know or remember that they hurt you. There's someone that you kind of carry this thing around, this offense around with you, and you allow it to dictate who you are, and it has nothing to do with who you are. It's about who they are. Can I tell you something? Just because someone offends you doesn't mean you have to be offended. You get the choice to decide, will I be offended or will I walk in this in victory and just say, all right. I can't do anything about them, but I can do something about me. I'm going to forgive. Why? Because I'm forgiven. Oftentimes, I think we need to, not in a guilty way, but oftentimes we need to visit the communion table. We need to visit the cross and not remember to make us feel bad, but to make us feel unbelievably honored about all that God has forgiven us of. And when we stand before the cross and we remember the blood and the body of Jesus as we take communion, we will remember that who are we not to forgive? Who are we to stand before anybody and say, nope, I can't forgive them when God has forgiven us? The forgiven should be forgivers. And the next thing, 3 characteristics of those who want an overflow and who God gives an overflow of. Getters should be givers. Jesus says in verse 30 to 34, give to everyone who begs from you, and from the one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? He said, that's easy stuff. For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. And then he says in verse 38, give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, an overflow will be put into your lap. For the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. That last statement is so important. See, a lot of us wonder, why don't we have joy? We don't give away any joy. We wonder, why don't we have peace? We don't bring peace into people's lives. We wonder, why don't we have grace? I just don't feel forgiven because we haven't forgiven. Why don't we have blessings? And why does it seem like the ball always bounces right financially for other people, but not for us? Maybe you're not a giver, and those who are given to should be givers. He says, here's the deal. For the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. In other words, God is he's just like God is always. He's saying, you get to decide. How am I going to measure what I give to you? Well, how do you give to others? How am I going to measure how much joy comes into your life? How much joy do you give away? How am I going to measure how much talent I give you? It's how much talent do you give away? How am I going to measure how supernaturally I give you more time because someone does something for you? Someone stands in the gap and covers something for you. You get to work and thought you're going to have to do something, but it's already done or it goes smoother. That's supernaturally God giving you more time. You know who he does that to? Those who will use their time for the kingdom. If you're using your time for yourself, if you're using your talent for yourself, if you're using all your treasure for yourself, God goes, okay, you must be good then. I don't need to give anymore to you because your measurement tool is defined by how you give. He says that's the measurement to which I use. And when it comes to generosity, isn't it funny? We can fake a lot of things. I mean, we can fake our peace. You can walk in acting like everything's fine and you've got peace in your life. We can fake our joy. We can plaster a smile on our face. We can fake just our knowledge, our wisdom, whatever we want. We can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake generosity. You're either a generous person or you're not. And your friends, your family, and those around you will know real quickly if you are. And in this passage, Jesus tells us not just to be generous, but he says to live with an extravagant generosity. We're to go above and beyond. We're to overflow. We're just to go, oh, hey, this is what they think they're going to get. I'm going to give them even more. This is how much grace they think they're going to get. I'm going to give them even more grace. This is how much love they think they're going to get. I'm going to love them at a greater level. They're going to have an overflow because God has poured into me and it's pouring out of me. And so out of my excess of everything that God's given me, as it pours out of my life, I am able to give to others. He says giving extravagantly and generously without any thought of how it will benefit us. I think about our ministry partners over at Crossover Church there in Moncks Corner. We got to help them yesterday and got to serve them. And it was our honor to be able to serve them because every single week they just overflow and give to those in our community that will never be able to pay back, ever. Every single week and every month, they live in a situation where they don't know if their church will be able to make it, to the next month. And so financially, we help them. We help them by sending people because they have a church service for just the mentally handicapped. People who can't return the thanks. People who can't sometimes, they come in wheelchairs and they can't say, what a great job, Pastor, and they do a service just for them. That they bust in all these kids that they bust in yesterday and we were able to serve them. And many of them who don't have even coats out in the cold weather yesterday and who've never ridden a horse. I heard a story about one child who'd never even seen a horse. He rode the horse 50 times yesterday. He got back, he'd get out of line, he'd get back in line, he rode the horse again. Can somebody say, that boy's sore today? You know that. But you never seen a horse. Just the little things we take for granted. Oftentimes there are people right in our communities. And we say, that was so cool that we got to serve yesterday. Do you know there's a group of people in our church who every single month show up at what we call Adopt-A-Block? We have 2 blocks right now. We want to have more. We just need more overflow of people who want to do that. And they serve people who will never be able to thank them, who will never be able to return the favor. And they just selflessly serve them every single weekend. He says, you want to just giving without any benefit. The Bible calls this radical generosity on our parts. We're supposed to have radical generosity towards our families. We're supposed to have radical generosity to other believers, radical generosity to the ministry of the church. If we believe in the mission and the vision of Freedom Church and we say, I'm a part of this family, radical generosity to those who aren't Christians as well. And even, the Bible has already told us, to our enemies. So are you generous? Are you a generous person? Here's a kind of a test. Let me give you a little test to tell you, where's the condition of your heart? Just answer these questions in your own mind, in your own soul. How do you tip? How are you at tipping? I mean, when it comes to tip, are you kind of the dollar no matter what guy? Or are you the one who gets the calculator out because you're going to figure out exactly what 15% is and down to the cent, and you're digging out pennies and you're putting them on the table? Are you the one, if service isn't quite like you like it, you'll leave just a few change just to kind of make your point? Or are you generous? Are you generous? Do you tip 20% or maybe more? See, I want to bless somebody. Have you ever thought about this? We go to a restaurant, and in this day and time, if it was 150 years ago, we are treated in America, middle class, even to lower class America, and economically, we are treated like only royalty was 150 years ago. Someone brings our food out to us. They sit it in front of us. They clean up all the Cheerios that our kids leave on the floor when we leave because we don't have to sweep it up. They bring out our steak that we get cooked by a chef back in the back for $7.99, and they bring that out, and we go, this isn't quite right. Can you take this back and get the chef to redo it? You get what you pay for, guys, all right? But you complain about it, and you don't do it. And then when they don't do exactly what you want them to do you tip them well? Or do we go, they're here to serve me? Or do you have a mindset of generosity? When you owe someone money, so you owe them money, do you round up? Or do you write them a check for the exact cents? You're like, I owe you $27.33. There we are. That's what I owe you. I'm not going to round up to 28. I'm not even thinking about rounding up to 30. You've lost your mind. Here's what I owe you exactly. Might point to where your heart is. Some of you say, no, that's just frugal. No, it's not. Some of you call frugal what is stingy. All right? So every time you think, that's just frugal, think stingy, because that's what it is. It's not generous, it's stingy. When someone borrows something from you or buys something for you just kind of small, or you buy something for them, I mean very small, you just kind of pick it up for them, they needed something, do you expect them to pay you back? Are you like all the way thinking, okay, they better give me that $1.50 for this Diet Mountain Dew because, I can't believe. And then when they offer it, you'll wave them off. No, you don't need to pay me back for that. And you expect them to put up a fight. You want them to be like, no, I'm going to pay you. So you walk away, and at least you feel good. But if they don't pay you, you walk away going, I can't believe I bought them a Diet Mountain Dew. And they didn't pay me back. You wait the next time they ask for a Diet Mountain Dew, I'm going to get them that fake Diet Mountain Dew. I'm going to get them that store brand Diet Mountain Dew that tastes like armpit. That's what I'm going to get them. The next time they ask me for something, that's a stingy heart. Hey, here's one. This will make me no friends whatsoever. Here we go. When your wife goes and gets her hair done, men, for you, kind of, deal. She gets her hair done. She gets it colored. She gets it made up. How much grief do you give her? When she leaves a big tip for the girl who does her hair, do you like, what in the world? Why does it? I got some food coloring over here. I can help you out with that, and we won't have to pay however much it costs to get your hair did. I mean, we won't have to do that. And then when she comes at Christmas and is like, I really want to give my hairstylist a Christmas bonus. Are you like, what? Christmas bonus for your hairstylist? I don't get no Christmas bonus. Why is she getting a Christmas bonus for your hairstyle? Do you have a stingy heart, men? When she buys some clothes to kind of make herself look fancy for you and prettied up for you, do you give her a hard time and like, clothes in your closet look like they work fine. There's no holes in them. I got some patches we can sew on to them. Or are you generous? Are you generous? Now, the ladies would say amen, but they're afraid to right now. So that's what that's about. So that's just practical ways. Are you generous? Are you a generous person? Now, I'm just a mailman. Don't blame me for the mail. But you might have a stingy heart. And so he says, I bless those who are generous, who think of not what can I do for me with God's blessings in my life, but think of what can I do for others? How can I bless others more? There's one more way that Jesus says we can have an overflow blessing. 3 characteristics of those who God overflows a blessing in their life. And remember, I'm just trying to set you up for an overflow. Here's the last thing. You check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right? So look at this verse. You think that was said in some movie or something. It was said right here in verse 37. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Now, this is one of the most often misquoted verses and misapplied verses in the Bible. This verse doesn't mean that we should never notice the faults of others. That's not what it's saying. How do we know this? Because in just a few verses after this, Jesus is going to tell us to observe the fruit of people's lives, especially Christ followers' lives, because we can discover their true natures when we see and observe the behavior that's born out of their lives. And so he says, hey, observe the fruit, see what people are like. We need to be able, as other Christ followers, to go and call people out when they don't look good in biker shorts, right? We need to be able to tell them, this is not good in your life. So that's not what it's saying. But we reverse engineer this. So a Christian in our oikos relationship comes to us and tells us, hey, there's sin, there's something you need to work on, man. This is an attitude you need to work on. This is a place you need to step up your game. You go, whoa, bro, don't judge me. Don't judge me. But then we see someone who's not a Christ follower outside of the faith, or we see a cause or an agenda that we don't agree with, and we're screaming judgment. We judge them. We judge them. I'll remind you again, people who don't know Jesus, you know what they act like? People who don't know Jesus. That's what they act like. You know what people who know Jesus should act like? People who know Jesus. And so he says, don't do that, but forgive. Don't condemn. Jesus is telling us not to evaluate others, but he is telling us to warn against a harsh, judgmental attitude that is always finding fault with others, because he wants to see if the forgiven will indeed forgive. Don't always be critical and find fault. Show mercy to others even when they don't deserve it. Why? Because God showed us that kind of mercy. And he showed us that kind of grace. Now, here's the kicker. If we live this way, these three characteristics, the forgiven should be forgivers, that those who get should be givers, that we just continue to kind of bless people and forgive people. We check ourselves. Proverbs says, God, show me, and just kind of look into my soul and show me where I can improve and be more like you, God. Show me where there's sin in my life. If we do that, if we live this way, Jesus says, it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. It'll be put into your lap, falling out of your lap, for with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. So do you want an overflow of love in your life? Then love others extravagantly. Those who love others, they receive the love of others. Just love them extravagantly. Do you want an overflow of resources in your life? Your time, your talent, your treasure? Then give generously. God will supernaturally bless those who use that for kingdom purposes. Do you want an overflow of grace in your life? You're saying, man, sometimes I just feel like I need more grace from God and from man. Then extend radical grace to others. Graceful people are given grace by others. And if we live that way, Jesus says we will overflow with his blessings. And the payoff to this payout is awesome. Look at verse 35 and 36. Your reward will be great. Your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, royalty of the Most High. For he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. So be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. Do you realize what these three characteristics in this scripture are describing for us? Jesus is describing the characteristics of God himself. Loving. God extends his love to his enemies. Look at Romans 5:8. God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Loving. Generous. Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son but gave him up for all of us, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? He's a generous God. He continues to be a generous God. Gracious, for I will be merciful toward their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. See, there's only been one person who has ever kept these commands and lived these three characteristics out of love and loving extravagantly, giving extravagantly, extending grace extravagantly, and it's Jesus. And that's why Freedom Church is about Jesus. It's always been about Jesus, and it always will be about Jesus. And I'm convinced that the only way to see these qualities develop within us is to keep coming back to what God has done for us. And when we see how much we're forgiven, we can't help but forgive. When we see how much grace we've been given, we can't help but give more grace. How can we overflow with God's blessing? By living in the light of God's extravagant grace every single day. And the more we see what Jesus has done for us, the more we'll be prepared to love others. And the more we see what Jesus, and the more He extends grace to us. And the more we extend grace to others, He will pour grace on us. And there will be an overflow in our lives. See, God is not a stingy God. God doesn't fill the box half full and then just stop and say, hey, that's all you get. No more blessings. That's all you get. No more good things. That's all you get. Nothing more in your life. But He says, who do I want to give to? Because I know the measurement tool that they use. And I'll bless them too. I'll bless them with a joyful life. I'll bless them with fun. I'll bless them with just happiness. And it'll be an amazing life because they are flowing out of themselves into others. And just honestly, we're just in a season of our church where I believe that God has poised us. And He's put us in a position. If we will live this out, we're going to have some opportunities in 2015 to overflow into Berkeley County. In fact, I think what we've seen in the last 3 years, this is just me. This is not a heavy revy from God. I don't have any claim of God coming down and talking to me. I'm just telling you what my spirit says. I believe all that God's done in the 3 years is going to be it's going to be doubled and more over 2015. I just believe that there's going to be an overflow if we're obedient to His call. And so we're in a season where God has poised us for that. So we're in a season where we've got to live it out. We've got to be the most graceful people. You've been working on your ID3. You want to know how to get them to come? Just offer them grace, offer them love, offer them, just generously give them your joy. Just be a person they want to come with. You know what else we got to do is we got to make room for people. You guys may have noticed we don't have very many chairs left on Sunday mornings. So you're sitting awfully close to your neighbor. And we've done everything we can do. We've got as many chairs and as we can have. And over the last several years, we've been telling you about the fact that we're going to get a building. And we've told you from the very beginning, it's not about a building to us, about the potential to have more seats in a place where we can see more people come to know Jesus and who are far from you, but far from God, but they're close to you. And so I want to just give you just a tiny little update on where we're at on our building before I tell you what the next step is with that. Now, that's exciting stuff, right? See that going up? It's been a long time in the making. We've had like 67 out of 90 days when it rained, when we didn't need it to rain at all. But we know that God's got a plan. I think part of His plan is that He's just setting us up even more for what we can do in 2015. And here's the deal. We've come to you guys already, and back in March of 2012, we said we want to buy some land, and we're going to need to buy the land. We can't get a loan on it. We're barely a year old, and there's no bank that's going to loan us any money to buy land. So we're going to buy some land, and we're going to put a building on it eventually. And then we came back and we said, here's what we need to be able to do that. And you guys were incredible. In March of 2012, we were a church of about 240 people or so, I think. And I remember Pastor Robbie coming back to the side where I was as we had kind of put the vision out there, and we said, hey, this is the big day. We're going to collect an offering to go towards that. And this little church of 240 people, but had a vision for reaching thousands of people, gave like a church of thousands of people. And we took up $240,000, I believe it was, that weekend. It was incredible. Just incredible. And listen, it wasn't from a few people giving large gifts. It was from a lot of people saying, I'm going to sacrifice. In fact, right now, you're sitting in a seat of sacrifice. Someone sacrificed so this church could be a church of 525 people. Someone said, I believe that when he says we're going to reach thousands of people, that I believe it. And I'm going to give as if I believe it. And so it got us to where we are now, which is we got a building that's dried in. And they're starting to put up studs inside the building. Not just the church staff, other studs as well. They're starting to put those in the church building. And I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to be great. It's going to happen. It's going to be amazing. But the deal is we need to finish out this project. I've told you before that I have no qualms to come and say it takes money to do these things. You guys are not ignorant. You know that to build a $2 million building, we've got to have money. They don't take monopoly money. I wish they did, because we'd get it all together and take it to them. And so what we're asking is that over the next few weeks, that you would consider what you can do. Some of you have given before. We're asking you to give again. Some of you have never been a part of this. You're new. In fact, over the summer, we've grown by about 100 people. We're asking you, do you sit in a seat of sacrifice? We want you to sacrifice now for the person who's going to have a seat that you've never met before. We'll have about 600 seats when we begin in this auditorium. It's going to be incredible. We're going to do multiple services there. We're going to see thousands of people reach there. And it's going to be this end of the year giving of 2014 that we're going to look back and go, that's where it happened. So in your seat there, you've got a card. And if you just take that as your card, I want you to take it with you. Kind of explains the overflow offering. And on there, it's got a goal. And that goal was set by, if you run the numbers, and if you go, okay, how many people we have, and what's our average giving, and how obedient will people usually be at end of the year giving, because they got Christmas stuff they want to buy, and are they going to really give? And so we ran the numbers, and we said, okay, we sent this to print several weeks ago, and we said, yeah, I think $75,000 is a good goal. And you can see there, we're going to do just like we asked you to do. We're going to do 10-10-80. 10% to missions, and it's going to go towards our Dream Center initiatives. It's going to go towards Maya Moms and Haiti mission trip in Jamaica. And we're going to do exactly like we tell you to do. We're going to tithe on the first 10% of this end of the year giving towards missions. We're going to take some and we're going to put it in savings, because that's smart to do. We want to have a rainy day fund, especially since some rainy days have cost us money. We've learned to have a rainy day fund. And then we're going to give 80% straight to finishing off this building project and being in as little debt as we can possibly do. But as I was looking at this goal, I'm going to be honest with you. It's like the Spirit of God kind of talked to me, and then I talked to some advisors and wise people around me, and I said, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? I felt like I had tiny heart syndrome. A church of 240 people faithfully gave $240,000. And I'm asking a church of 525 people on most weekends, probably 700 people who would say, yeah, I'm a part of Freedom Church, to give $75,000. I have to admit, I didn't believe in you very much, and I apologize for that. But God convicted me of my sin, and I'm saying, I don't know what we're going to do, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a lot more than that. And let me tell you, we need it. We bought a lot of brick, or a lot of dirt, a lot of rocks, a lot of stuff has happened. And we want to finish this thing strong. And so we're asking again. You've got 2 envelopes there as well in your seat for the overflow offering. We're going to bring these offerings and return them to God above and beyond your tithes. So this isn't just transferring over your tithes on December 7th. You've got 2 offering envelopes there, because if you want to go in and bring some early, if you want to bring some later in the year, we'll take up end of the year giving to the end of the year, so you could do that as well. But you've got on there an amount given that you're going to give that day, and then also just the amount that you'll be able to give by the end of the year. Now let me tell you, we talk about money a lot here, but I never know how far to go. You always feel weird talking about money. People get really anxious. So if you're a first-time guest, just let me say to you, you have no obligation to give unless you're a millionaire. Then we'd love for you to give, okay? So you do that. But you have no obligation to give whatsoever. You just sit back you kind of kick the tires, you see if this is your family. But a whole bunch of you last weekend filled out a card that said, I want to be in the family. And here's what we're doing. We're just sharing the family budget with you. We're just saying this is what the family budget is. We're all going to have to sacrificially give in order to make this happen. So don't get anxious. Just go, this is just a real talk. We're always honest with you about where we're at. We're always honest with you. And I never know. I remember one time I was at a party for a little family friend, and it's a little girl's birthday, and I was talking to a guy that was there. He's fairly new to Freedom. And he said to me, he said, you know what I love about Freedom Church is you guys never talk about money. And I was like, man, he's not been here very long. He hasn't come very much. And then here's what else is. The next day we were preaching on, it was just happened to come into scripture that we were studying. It was going to be on tithing. So I was like, hey, so tomorrow is going to be a little disappointing to you in what you just told me. He came up to me after this last service. He goes, that was me, wasn't it? I was like, it was. He's like, and I'm still here. You talked about money. I'm still here. So it's all good, right? It's all good. Here's the other thing. No guilt. No guilt. Everybody's been blessed differently. Everybody has a different time that they can serve. Everybody has different talents that they can give. Some people are 1-talent people, and they need to turn them into 2. Some people are 5-talent people. They need to turn them into 10. You just got to decide, how has God blessed you financially, and what would be a sacrifice? There's a dear lady who comes to this church. She's been here since the very first day of this church. And she came to me early on. She said, God has called me here, and I'm going to be praying for you, and I'm a part of this. And every single week, she's on a very fixed income. She can't give very much at all. Every single week, her tithe comes in, and it's not a lot. It wouldn't impress anybody. But can I tell you, her faithfulness is part of the reason we have favor from God. And so regardless of what the amount is that we can give, what God is asking is for us to pray about sacrifice. And we sit in the seat of sacrifice of others, and now it's time for us to sacrifice, because God's got big plans. I really believe it. We need a building that can hold 600 paid for, because we're going to need to build some more buildings across Berkeley County that will hold 600 more. Does anybody believe in that with me this weekend? So I want you to consider that. I want you to bring that on December 7th. We'll come back on December 14th, and we'll give you a report of what God has done and how much you've exceeded that little puny goal that I thought was a good goal to put in print. I'll always proofread. Get God to proofread your stuff before you print it. That's what I've learned there. All right, so I want to ask you to do that and just prayerfully consider. I also want to ask you to do something else, and this is important as we go into 2015. This is the last thing, is just to consider. Big gifts are great. One-time kind of gifts are great. We need it. We're asking for it. But what really, really happens is when we practice 1 Corinthians 16:2, we're able to do the mission and the vision of this church. And it says on the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up as he may prosper. So according to what you get, you put it aside. That's the tithe. Isn't God even generous in the way he tells us to give? There's not an amount that we're to give. It's just a percentage, so that there will be no collecting when I come. In other words, Paul says, look, I don't want to have to come and do the overflow offering. That's really what he's saying. I want to come, and because you've set everything aside so well, you've tithed so well, you don't have to do this. Do you know what my hope is? My hope is that we will never have to do an overflow offering again. My hope would be that we would, if everyone tithed, we'd pay for our building next year. It'd be paid off. And then we'd start setting aside for the next one. And so would you just prayerfully consider over this season your percentage giving? Be a percentage giver. Just start to say, I'm going to be a percentage giver, and I'm going to be a purposeful giver during the overflow offering. But I'm going to make sure I'm consistent with my percentage giving, because God's asked us to return it. And here's what we promise you. You're going to see great things done with it. We're going to manage it well. You're going to be proud to be a part of Freedom Church. And let me honestly say, if you're someone who says, I can't give to that church because I don't trust them, please find another church that you can trust. Please do, because I want you to be a joyful giver who gives to a church and says, man, they are going to rock this world with this little bit that I'm giving. It's going to be multiplied. So let's just consider that together. Let's pray. God, we ask for your blessings of favor on our church as you've already been doing. We ask that as we forgive, that we will be forgiven, that as we give, that we will be given to, and that, God, you would help us to consider to check ourselves, God, right now as we enter into response time. God, I just feel prompted to say that there are some here right now who need to forgive somebody today. Right now, there is a pressure on their heart and their soul. They can't be a joyful giver. They can't be a joyful parent. They can't be a joyful brother or sister or wife or husband because there's no joy, because the lack of forgiveness has ripped their soul apart. And God, I pray that you would prompt them to follow your leading right now that you've given them. Thank you, Jesus. God, I pray that we would all as a church prayerfully consider how we can sacrificially give to this project. We can finish out strong, have the church that we know will reach thousands of people in Berkeley County, and we can be the church. God, be with us as we respond. In Jesus' name.